Hey everyone, and welcome to your friendly neighborhood atheist. I am Ethan Micheal, and alongside me is my guest for the evening, a Mr. Dean Meadows. Dean, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to be on your show again. It's been a quick minute since the last time I was on.
It has been a while, but this time is exciting because now it truly is me and you, one-on-one, in the squared circle. I have no atheist reinforcements this time.
In a discussion is
In a
what you
discussion.
said.
No, this originally, just so everyone's aware, I originally wanted to try debating again. So I had billed this as a debate, but if you hadn't noticed, I changed the flyer and changed the title. The more I learned, the more I realized I don't know enough. And, being completely transparent, I don't know if I can handle Dean in a debate, but, we'll see. So that right now, this is just a conversation on the topic, does God exist? So, Dean, if you could, though, to start us off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, currently I'm the executive director of the 501c3 organization, the Daily Apologist, where essentially we seek to utilize social media and streaming platforms to present apologetics. Prior to that, I was a minister for 8 years at 2 different congregations. Prior to that, I attended the Bear Valley Bible Institute International in Denver, Colorado, for my, I guess you could call, seminary training. I've got a master's from Biola this past year, and that's just kind of my academic work history. I served in the Marine Corps for 6 years with a deployment to Iraq. And then I guess from a Christian standpoint, I became a Christian when I was 15, 16, right around in that area. Really didn't question it. And then when I went to Iraq, started to have some serious doubts, or questions, I guess I could say, questions towards the end of my deployment, and determined that when I came back home that I was going to look at that stuff. So I enrolled in college at Longwood University in Farmville, Virginia, where I originally grew up. And so for the first pretty much year outside of studies, I picked up, what was it? The God Delusion by Dawkins. I picked up, what else? God is Not Great by Hitchens. Read some Bertrand Russell. Who else? I don't know who else off the top of my head, but and figured that those at that moment, that's when I really started to doubt, because I thought that, Dawkins and Hitchens. Oh, Sam Harris. I read The End of Faith, The Letter to a Christian Nation. Read Dawkins, Hitchens, Dennett, The Four Horsemen, and was just like, okay, I believe that these are really good arguments. So I was interested to see what the other side, or what my side, I guess you could say, the Christian side, had. Looked at some, who was it? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Oh yeah, Lee Strobel. Wasn't overly convinced by Strobel. I thought that Strobel could tell a good story, but I don't know that I would say that Strobel was as rigorous as I was looking for in argumentation. And then that's when, what was that? Oh yeah, so I saw some debates by a guy by the name of William Lane Craig, and I watched a multitude of those where he was debating some of the top atheists. And then I went back and read some of his stuff. Read him. J.P. Moreland was another guy that I read.
Okay.
And essentially, came to the determination that Christianity was true. And then probably, I'd say 3 years ago, I decided to venture into the apologetics realm and get a formal degree in it. So there you go. That's my
You got
life,
quite the background there, Dean.
life story in the Cliff Notes right there. So yeah.
For those watching, if you do have any questions for Dean or I, make sure you tag me. So then towards the end of the show, I can scroll back and see who's tagged me and ask the questions. I won't be as active in the comments section today because I need to be focused on the person standing in front of me right now. So, Dean, first off, what specifically made you Christian before we get into the arguments for God?
So are we talking like initially made me Christian? I would say the initial thing that made me a Christian wasn't necessarily any formal argumentation. I would say that it was more along the lines of I was going to a specific church in a specific denomination that I'll keep anonymous, for the sake of anybody else who's there. One of the mainline popular denominations in America. And, I started having questions about, is this really what Christianity is supposed to look like? So it wasn't this, is it true? I had just presupposed that it was true. And then I asked the question, is this really what Christianity is supposed to look like? And I started actually reading, my Bible. And so I found that what I was looking at and what was being practiced in everyday life was just didn't add up. And I was like, well, I just want to find out what's true here within the scope of Christianity. So I really started looking at that, and I left that and went to a congregation that I thought was there, learned a whole bunch of new stuff about Christianity, and obeyed from that point on. So,
okay. Well, Dean, if we could get started, do you want to start with the Kalam, or what would be the best argument for God that you would like to start with?
Right. Well, I'm trying to be, I want to be super sarcastic right now and say they're all good.
You can be as sarcastic and as you can put my feet to the fire as hard as you like.
No, that's fine. I don't think that it's necessarily one argument that makes Christianity true. I think it's and I know that it might come across as a buzzword, but it genuinely is a cumulative case for the existence of God. I think, right out of the gate, my personal favorite is obviously the Kalam. I don't know if that's the most convincing, but we can start there. The Kalam says that whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause.
So regarding that first premise,
right.
From my understanding of it, I would object to it, just because while everything I've seen has a cause, I can't for certain say that everything does have a cause.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there would be things that that doesn't necessarily, things exist that I think that may not have causes, but the first premise, I think that's where we're off here already on the first premise, is that it's not whatever exists has a cause. It's whatever begins to exist has a cause. So I think that's the first place that I would maybe push back a little bit. And I think it's simply the metaphysical principle, the study of reality, that out of nothing, nothing comes. It's what's called the causal principle in metaphysics. And so I think if you push back on the first premise, then you would have to demonstrate how something could come from nothing. And I don't think that that's
Oh, I can't.
possible.
I'm not saying I can demonstrate that, and
Right.
I'm even saying that that's possible. I'm just saying without being able to, I guess, verify that everything specifically has a cause. Sorry, whatever begins to exist has a cause. I can't really accept that statement.
So you can't accept the statement that whatever begins to exist has a cause?
No, because again, I can't observe and I have no way to test everything that has ever began to exist. In particular, I have no
Right.
way to see how the universe began.
Well, I think you could at least appeal to the uniformity of nature, right? I don't know that any scientist has shown I think scientists have clearly demonstrated that things that begin to exist have a cause. I don't know of a scientist that has demonstrated that something could begin to exist without a cause. So you're a scientific minded fellow.
I hope so.
Yeah, no, you are. So where there's overwhelming evidence for, as far as we know, in the uniformity of the world and nature, things that begin to exist have a cause. That seems to be scientifically verified and not falsified. Also, I would appeal to my everyday experience as well, right? As we're sitting here right now, you're not worried that once the show's over with and you walk out of the room that a black grizzly bear is going to come into being, just materialize and then maul you to death, right? You're not worried about that.
No, of course I'm not worried. And again, I don't think in this, I don't want to misrepresent you, but it sounds like you're trying to place the burden on me because I'm simply not accepting the first premise, and I'm not making a positive claim that it is possible. I'm just saying until I can actually see, every example that everything began to exist having a cause, I am having trouble.
I guess my question is, why do you need to see absolutely positively every example? How much scientific data would you need to see to be convinced that? It seems like you're saying that in order for me to believe the first premise of the Kalam, I need to see every single scientific piece of data that's both available and not available in order to believe that whatever begins to exist has a cause. That seems like radical skepticism to me.
Okay, I don't want to call it radical skepticism, but I get where you're going. I guess, how can we test or prove that something cannot come from nothing or cannot erupt from nothing? Do we have a way to actually conclusively investigate that and then narrow it out as a possibility?
I think that there would be some models of the universe that could be simulated that would say, all right, well, this is how you would get a universe from nothing. And Lawrence Krauss proposes that in his book, A Universe from Nothing, I think back in 2013 and 2014. But it's been, in my opinion, it's been a astronomical failure on Krauss's part. I mean, he even tries to do that in his book. So, I mean, I just see the first principle, the causal principle, that, I think it was Aristotle that said it, that from nothing, nothing comes. So I still think you have a burden of proof to say, if you're going to deny the first premise and you're going to say, I don't think that the first premise is true. And then your reasoning is, well, I haven't seen or I don't have a way to know that every single thing that's ever come into existence has a cause, or something to the matter of what you said. I don't understand why you couldn't go on what we currently know, even if you went inductively, as an inductive inference to the best explanation, and say, hey, as far as we know, and as far as we experience nature, and as far as we experience life, this is the way things work until proven otherwise. I don't understand why that's unreasonable.
Oh, I'm not saying so. I'm not saying it's unreasonable.
Right.
I'm
Okay.
not willing to accept it without more information. Like it
Well, what
is.
information would you be looking for, I guess is my question.
I guess we would need a way to investigate nothing. Do we have that you know of, and you're probably more well versed in this area than I am? Do we have a way that we can investigate nothing, or do we have an example of nothing?
I think when you say nothing, nothing is no thing. There are no properties to nothing. And so in that sense, that's why I think the first premise holds, is because I think that's why the first premise holds, because nothing can't do anything, right? So you can't have something from absolute nothing. So I think
But
that's
do
the
we
issue
know that?
from your perspective, right?
How do we know that without actually being able to look at it? Because it sounds like you're saying we already conclusively know that something can't erupt from nothing
Right,
when we
correct.
don't have an example of nothing to
But why
be
do
able.
I need some empirical here? I guess another way that I would tackle this would be, why do I need an empirical data point with regards to this? I mean, it's to be frank, I find that, and I'm don't want to be overly harsh to you, but I find that
Don't go
absurd that
back.
we have to have access to nothing when nothing literally it means no thing. Why couldn't we just, why couldn't we just say logically, in some type of deductive argument, that this is the case, right? Why couldn't we say, from just a logical standpoint, Aristotle's right? I think it's Aristotle. Out of nothing, nothing comes. That's a logical conclusion. That's sound. That seems to be the correct way to go. Why do we need an empirical data point? That seems to be saying that, like, in all aspects, science is king.
Well, I don't. I guess why would I not rely on science? Like, I don't want to say science is king, but why would I not rely on that?
Well, all the science points to whatever begins to exist has a cause, and the scientific data doesn't show anything materializing from nothing. Even if you wanted to say, well, no, I don't necessarily know that that would be the right point, but yeah, science would show that things don't come from nothing. Like,
How
nothing has no properties. You understand that, right? Like,
right?
it can't metabolize, it can't reproduce, it can't, nothing can explode from nothing, or something can explode from nothing.
That's just an assertion, though. You're
That's
just
not an assertion.
stating that. You can't necessarily prove that.
Okay, all right, go grab me some nothing, and then
I can't grab nothing because
okay,
in front of me is everything.
so then it seems like the first premise holds then.
No, because you're just saying, well, this does not sound plausible, so therefore, the first premise is sound, and I don't get that, because unless we have an example of nothing to test this, why would we just? I don't want to say, like, why would we just assert that something can't come from nothing?
Okay, it seems like you're talking out of two sides here. First, you're saying I need a data point to investigate no thing, right?
Okay.
So if no thing is no thing, then you couldn't get to a data point, number one. But then you're saying, on the second side of the argument, that for me to say out of nothing, nothing comes, that's just some type of assertion. And that's not just an assertion. That's a logical conclusion with regards to the definition, to this definition of nothing. And then secondly, I'm not just baldly asserting things. I'm saying, hey, the scientific data shows that whatever begins to exist has a cause, and that our everyday experience, unless we have a defeater for those everyday experiences, shows us also that things don't come into existence without a cause.
Can you?
So, I mean, so on one hand, you see the quandary that I'm laying out here. On one side, you're saying I need a data point for nothing. And then on the other side, you're saying, well, I'm just asserting things. And I'm simply replying by saying, out of nothing, nothing comes. I'm pretty sure that's a logically tight argument. And then on the second side, I'm saying I'm not just baldly asserting things. I'm saying that scientific data and our everyday experience show that the first premise is true.
But again, okay. Let me. Sorry, let me think.
That's
about
okay.
A second. Let me try this another way. If I'm trying to formulate my words as best as I can here.
Okay.
If we cannot, a few moments ago, you had said that science has concluded that everything has a cause. Is that correct?
The science states that whatever begins to exist has a cause. That's the first premise.
Or the Kalam?
That's the first premise to the Kalam. And I also think that science would demonstrate that as well, that whatever begins to exist has a cause.
So science can demonstrate that everything we can test has a cause, from my understanding. But I don't think it can conclusively say everything has a cause, particularly when we're talking about the birth of the universe. I mean, we are still so far, like we have so much to learn and to progress as a species. So to just assume that the universe can't come from nothing.
I'm not assuming that. I'm saying okay, well then if the universe can come from nothing, then show me or cite me a scientific model that produces a universe from nothing.
Why would I need to, if I'm simply not accepting your premise? I'm not saying you're wrong. If I was saying you're wrong and something can come from nothing, then I would agree that I would need to demonstrate that and show you scientific data. But again, I'm not stating that. I don't even know that that's possible. But until we have a way to look into it, I don't see any reason why I should accept that premise. Particularly because when we look at the birth of the universe, time, from my understanding, can break down. So then, how do we know when it actually began?
Okay, so now it seems like we're getting into the second premise of the Kalam.
Okay.
Not the first premise.
Okay, we can jump back.
So that's fine. If you want to move on to the second one, we can move on to the second one because we still have two more arguments to go.
Yeah, we should
something like that.
As long as you know that I do not accept the first premise.
That's I don't have a problem with you not accepting the first premise. I don't necessarily know that I came into the discussion expecting you to agree with me on every point that we make. So second premise is that the universe began to exist. That's the second premise of the Kalam cosmological argument. And so the way that I guess Craig builds his argument is from there's some philosophical arguments and then some I guess you would say scientific arguments that he makes as well.
Okay. I mean, I I personally don't have an issue with premise 2, although I still seem like can you say it back to me one more time? It's
The
whatever
universe has a
began.
cause. Okay, I'll go premise 1 and premise 2. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. Whatever, or the universe began to exist is the second premise. So whatever begins to exist has a cause. Premise 2, the universe began to exist.
Okay, so the universe began to exist.
Right.
I at this time don't have an issue with that.
Okay. So you agree that premise 2 is true? Or is that what you mean by I don't have an issue with it?
Yeah, I guess I'm having trouble with begins, but I don't.
I'm talking about premise 2. The universe began to exist.
Right,
Meaning
okay.
there's a finite point in the past in which the universe came into being.
Do we know the exact point at which it came into being?
Do I have to know the exact point when something came into being to know that it exists or had a beginning? Like, I don't know the exact point when you came into being, but I know that given a study of you, that there was a point in the finite past where you came into being.
Right. So how do we know that this, I guess, universe, began to exist?
Right. So the way that I would frame it is I don't know with 100% certainty a lot of things. And I think that you and I would agree with that.
Absolutely.
Right. So the question is, which arguments are more plausible? Is the premise that I'm putting forward more plausible than the negation? Meaning, is the existence of the universe or the beginning of the universe more plausible than an eternal universe, given the data that we know? And how I would argue premise 2 is that it is more plausible, and I would even say maybe more probable, that the universe began to exist than it being eternal for philosophical and scientific reasons.
So why would you say it's more likely? Because I guess where I'm confused is we don't have any examples of other universes. So
Right.
now it sounds like, okay, because we have experiences with, like, for example, human beings coming into existence and plants coming into existence, that we're taking that and applying it to the birth of the universe, when we are, we have no way to look into that. How do we know?
Okay. So yeah, so the analogy, I was simply trying to point out in the analogy that I don't have to know when something comes into being to know that it came into being, right? Or that it's more probable than not that it came into being and had a beginning. That's all I'm trying to show. Like, I don't know specifically when you came into existence,
Right.
right? But if I were a complete stranger, I could do a study on you or study on something else that is foreign to me and simply say, okay, well, based upon the data that I have, this thing, it's possible that Ethan Michael has been around for all of eternity, right? It's possible,
That would be cool.
right? But it's not probable given the data. So that's all I'm saying when it comes to the universe. So the reason that I would say that the universe it's more probable than not that the universe had a beginning stems really from, I would say, a couple of philosophical arguments. I don't know if I want to get in the weeds on those. I guess about I don't know if I want to get into the weeds on that. Let me talk about the scientific data then first.
Okay.
And if you want to go back and say, hey, let's get into the weeds, we can
I
get
guess
into the weeds.
my main question here is, it seems I get where you're going, that because we have all these examples of things coming into existence, that it's probable that the universe came into existence. But where I'm, I guess, hesitant is we've never observed the beginning of a universe or any universe,
Right.
at least from my understanding. And if I'm wrong, please correct me.
No,
Why would we
we
apply
haven't. Um,
logic, like the birth of a human being or a plant, to
Right.
to equate it to the birth of the universe?
Right. So I'm not equating it to the birth of the universe. I think that's where you might be missing the analogy. I'm simply saying, um, I'm simply trying to make the point that just because I don't observe something coming into being doesn't mean that I can't reason to the best explanation that it did come into being and that it's not eternal. So, for instance, if I went out and I observed, I was in a place that I had no exposure to trees. I lived in the desert all my life.
Okay.
And then I moved somewhere to, say, like Europe or whatever. And the first thing that I ever saw was a tree. I could collect scientific data points in which I said, hey, this thing could be eternal. But given the evidence that I have, in all probability and all plausibility, this thing had a beginning at a finite point in the past, even if I didn't see that plant go from seed to tree. Does that make sense? And
Yes.
uproot through the ground. So all I'm saying is that just because we don't observe other universes coming into being doesn't mean that I can't assemble data points that seem to indicate that the universe came into being.
Yeah, I get why you were coming to that conclusion, and I again agree it's probable. But I hate to do this to you, Dean, but I'm actually going to have to retract my earlier statement. I'm not going to accept premise 2. And I
Hey, one second, Ethan. I'm sorry to cut it short. I'm not leaving, but I just heard my dad scream. I gotta go check up on him.
Oh, yeah, no problem. In the meantime, thank you to my patrons, Cindy PLAZA, Trina Deluca, Kenneth Leonard, Kathy Letto, Ian Davenport, and Blazing Wizard Pope, and Bestname. You guys are awesome. If you like what I'm doing, consider becoming a patron. And also, if you could, like and subscribe. I hope everyone, by the way, I haven't had a chance to say hi to everybody. Hi, IQ, Kathy Letto, Ricardo. Ricardo, I know you love the Kalam, so this is just for you. Larry the Christian, always a pleasure to see you. Oh, Kathy, I got to make you a mod. I can't believe I didn't do that. What's up, Brainbug? Brainbug is going to be on the show this coming Tuesday, and we're going to be talking about aliens and supernatural claims, and that's going to be at 6:30. Actually, after the show tonight, let me just take Dean off screen for the time being. After the show tonight on my other channel, YFNA News, I'm going to be interviewing a police officer, and we're going to be talking about defunding the police, which I'm pretty excited about. Anyways, do most people accept premise 2? Because I feel like I've seen other atheists accept that, and I'm having trouble here, and maybe I'm incorrect or not thinking about this right. But to me, without an example of a universe like coming into existence at a specific time, it's hard for me to just accept that the universe began to exist. But please let me know what yeah, I can't talk, what your thoughts are. And oh, hi SJ, nice to see you. And a friendly reminder, possibility and probability need to be demonstrated. That's a good point. And for those that are just tuning in, we did change this from a debate to basic conversation on this topic. So far, we're stuck on premise 2 of the Kalam. I don't accept either of them. Yeah, I maybe at this point we should, I guess, move on to the next premise or the ontological. And Kenneth Leonard actually earlier or a few weeks ago, he sent me a really good rebuttal for the ontological argument, and it's confusing. These long. I guess what I'm wondering, and I'm going to have to ask Dean this, is have any of these arguments ever convince somebody? Because I can't really picture someone hearing that and going, yeah, I now believe God exists.
Are you telling everybody that you don't know if anybody's ever been convinced by these arguments?
That's correct.
Nice. I caught the end of it, so I figured that's what was going on. So
all right. So we're 36 minutes in. Do you want to move on to the third premise? Or should we move on to the resurrection or the
but we'll spend probably the most. I mean, we'll probably eat up a bunch of time talking third premise. I think if you want, we can talk about it if you're going to have an after party or something like that. I don't know.
Okay. I mean, if you're down, yeah, I have till about 8:40. I got about probably another hour and a half. So if anyone would like to do an after party and come on and talk to me and Dean, let me know. We got about 24 minutes left.
We see in the comments that SJ doesn't think the ontological argument's convincing. I'd love to talk to SJ about that at some point.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that. Thank you, SJ.
So let's go ahead. I'll talk resurrection for a quick minute, if that's okay.
Sure. Before we get to the resurrection, I cannot believe I forgot to ask this. And let's say right now I accept all three premises.
Yeah.
Since the conclusion isn't God, and God is nowhere in there, how does the Kalam get you to God?
Right. So this seems to be a classic, and this isn't, I'm not laying this on you. Don't hear me lay this on you. Okay. But this is one of those things. I remember when Homer Simpson used to say that really grinds my gears, or somebody used to say that. I don't know if it was from Family Guy or The Simpsons, but this is the one that really kind of grinds my gears, because everybody that I've come across that's in the atheist community, well, not everybody, some, seem to think that because God's not mentioned in the premises, that somehow the Kalam isn't designed to get somebody to God. It's called the Kalam Cosmological Argument for the existence of God. So you take the first three premises to eliminate all the extras, or the first two premises to eliminate all the extra stuff. And sometimes what atheists will do, they'll say, well, here's Kalam proper and here's like Kalam extended. But if you look at the literature by William Lane Craig, if you look at the literature by Al-Ghazali from the Middle Ages, they don't make this distinction. And Craig's the originator of the current form of the Kalam. And all Craig does is he takes the third premise and he does conceptual analysis with the third premise, which a lot of philosophical arguments do. So it's not like he's going outside the bounds of philosophy to do that. So that's just my qualm with it, but we don't need to spend too much time on it. But what you need to know is that it also doesn't follow logically that just because God's not in the premise or any of the premise doesn't mean that it's not referencing to an argument for the existence of God. So
move on to the
resurrection. And Kenneth Leonard is right, though there are some pesky atheists.
Those, yeah, we're all pesky. We just never mind. I was going to say we don't want to be.
You're about to go something. You're about to go sarcastic, and that's.
I know. I was about to go sarcastic, and I bit my tongue. Okay, so the resurrection. Now, I will, for the sake of this discussion. Now, granted, I want to be very clear. I have not done enough research to make a positive or negative claim on if Jesus, the human, did exist. However, for this discussion, I am going to accept that Jesus was at least a real person.
Right.
Go ahead.
Gotcha. Okay, that's perfectly okay. I'll, for the sake of this conversation, accept that Jesus was a real person as well, even though I absolutely believe that he was. So, how much time do you have? Sorry, you have until when? I just want to know how.
I technically have like 8:40, but if you want to do an after party, maybe we should, end it in about 20 minutes.
Okay, that's
party.
perfectly fine. So, basically, the argument from the resurrection, there's multiple ways that people can approach it. I think Lydia and Tim McGrew and I think Jonathan McClatchy would go maximal data approach, whereas someone like Mike Lacona, Gary Habermas would go minimal facts, and then William Lane Craig doesn't say that he does a minimal facts. He does. I don't know what he calls it, but he doesn't call it minimal facts. I personally like the minimal facts approach, just because I find that the easiest for my brain to handle.
If we could, though, real quick, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
I just want to say I'm sorry about your son, and I really hope his symptoms stay mild and he gets better, and no one else in your family gets COVID.
Oh, did you say SJ?
Yeah, her son, unfortunately, has COVID, and they're in quarantine.
That's terrible. I'm sorry to hear that, SJ.
So definitely, best wishes from your friendly neighborhood atheist.
No doubt. Okay. Man, that's just like a buzzkill right there. So how much or where do you want to go with the resurrection?
Well, here, let's do it like this. I pretend I know nothing, and you there's an example of nothing. I know nothing.
Right.
So let's try and make me a believer, because if Jesus of Nazareth was not only just a real person but the Son of God, that would be pretty convincing for me. So bring me to your side, Dean.
Okay, so first thing that we want to I guess that we want to establish is things that you and I could both agree on. And I think one of those things, given the sake of the argument, would be something like, all right, Jesus died by crucifixion. That would be something I think both, if Jesus existed, which you've granted, then you might be able to say that he died by crucifixion.
Okay,
would you be willing to see that?
For sake of argument, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
A living person, and he died via crucifixion.
Okay. So the second piece, now this is where I want the audience to pay close attention to, is specifically what I'm claiming, because sometimes it gets misconstrued.
Okay.
So shortly after Jesus's death, the disciples believed, that's the key word, they believed that Jesus appeared to them risen from the dead. That's the second point. That they believed that they had this type of experience.
Okay. I would find, because we have no example of anyone like resurrecting from the dead that I've seen, I feel the more likely conclusion would be that if they believe they saw him, that it probably wasn't him. I mean, we have eyewitness accounts of people who see, Tupac and Elvis. So we're going back 2,000 years when people were incredibly superstitious and gullible. I mean, these were people that not only didn't know where the sun went at night, but they thought, magicians were actually, or illusionists were real magicians. And I would find that going back that far, that people would be not only more gullible, but less credible. So I would personally have trouble accepting that they saw what they think they saw.
Okay. Well, I'm not, and that's where I wanted to make the distinction in premise 2. I'm not claiming that they, at least in the premise 2. Premise 2 says that they believed that they saw these things, not that they actually did. They believe that they saw these things. So someone believes that they saw Tupac doesn't mean that they actually did, right? So I'm just saying after Jesus' death, these disciples believed that they saw him, right?
Huh.
I'm not saying in premise 2 specifically, I'm going to make a cumulative case that their belief is justified, right? But I'm simply saying
Okay.
they believe that they had this experience where they saw Jesus risen from the dead. Now, it seems to me that you may be making a genetic fallacy in the sense that you're saying, well, this is 2,000 years ago. This is the type of culture that they had, yada, yada, yada. Well, even if that was that type of culture, and even if it was 2,000 years ago, I don't know that it necessarily follows that because that was the culture, or because whatever else you said, that bears anything to the truth of the claim, right? And so yeah.
So, okay, I guess follow-up question. Can we trace back to who these people were? Like, do we know their names, or anything about them?
Which are you specific? Are you talking about the apostles?
Yeah, the ones that believe they saw Jesus. Like, do we have their 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 names, and do we know specifically who they are?
Right. I think you'd have multiple lines of source material that would show that these guys were historical. Sure. Yeah. I think Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, Paul in Galatians 1 and 2, Paul in Corinthians chapter, well, it's still 1 Corinthians. 1
Do
Corinthians chapter 1, 15.
Okay, do we have sources outside the Bible that confirm these people saw Jesus after he was dead?
Why do I need sources outside the Bible?
Because I mean, I personally don't believe the Bible's true. I mean, are there aspects of it that have truth in it? Yeah, but I wouldn't use or consider the Bible to be a reliable source. Now, let's say it is a reliable source. I would think this would be a scenario where we need more than one source. Do we have any historical evidence outside of the Bible that will show, hey, these people saw this? Does it have their names, anything about them outside of like just referring to them as apostles?
Okay, so it seems like, and you'll have to uh, help me out here. So first you're asking the question, if it's not reliable, is there anything outside of it that would say that these are real people, historical truths? Is that what you're asking? Or you're asking if they saw Jesus raised from the dead?
I guess, do we have additional sources outside of the Bible? Like, pretend we're fact checking here. We don't just go to, Snopes.com and believe that they're accurate all the time. We got to look at other sources and see if these accounts line up. Like, okay, we have the Romans said this in these historical documents. The Bible states this. Then these people over here state this. Like, are we able to talk? Like, do we have information from other civilizations in that area that can also verify that information that's in the Bible?
Okay, and I'm not trying to be super
No, nitpick, man. You don't,
or anything like that. I'm trying to nail down what you're. I guess I'm not hearing you correctly. Are you trying to ask the question? Do we have any sources outside of the Bible that show that these guys were apostles? Or are you saying, do we have any information outside the Bible that would suggest that, these guys saw Jesus raised from the dead?
I guess a few things here. Do we have sources to verify that, one, these people are who they say they are? Like, okay, I know you're Dean Meadows. I can verify that with your
Right.
license, with Facebook. Do we have a way to verify that these apostles were indeed real, credible people?
Right.
And we know who they were.
Right. So I would say there are at least two sources outside of that. One would be Clement of Rome, and the other one would be Polycarp, that are early 2nd century. I would say you've got Josephus that speaks about Jesus and his brother James. You've got what else? As far as Christianity goes, you've got the early church fathers. You've got that's as far as I go right now. I mean, you've got also, just as far as Christianity in general, you've got Tacitus that talks about Christianity. But I still think, so those are some outside sources about Christianity in general. I know you weren't asking that, but I'm making that as a supplication.
Okay.
And some of the main players, so to speak, of the early Christian movement. Now, within these documents, you do have separate sources that attest to these individuals. So, and I like to bracket this off in 3 sections. The first section would be the Synoptic Gospels, which would be Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Okay.
Then you have John, which is structured differently than Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And then you have the writings of Paul, which are different than the Synoptic Gospels and John. So you have 3 seemingly independent sources that attest to these characters. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John mention all these, or Matthew, Mark, and Luke mention all these characters. John mentions all these characters. And then you have Paul, who in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 mentions a couple of characters, namely Peter and Jesus. And then in 1 Corinthians 15, he's relaying an early oral creed that mentions these characters. Now,
So,
if you take, real quick, if you take these,
go ahead.
If you take the Synoptics and John to be anonymous, and you say, well, we don't know who wrote these, well, then you still have 3 authors that are synoptic authors that mention these people. And then you have a unidentified author in John who mentions all these people. And then you have Paul.
Do we have any, or I guess jumping back to something you said just a moment ago, are these all Christian sources?
So, and that's the other thing that I would mention. Yes, they're all Christian sources, but that would be like asking, I want to know something about the Gallic Wars or the Civil War, and here's the kicker: you can't use any sources outside of the Union or inside of the Union Army for me to know anything about the Union Army. You'd be appealing to a prejudice. Or if you wanted me to know facts about, Roman figures, am I allowed to use Roman sources to know facts about Roman figures? I think I should be. Why can't I do the same thing? Why wouldn't I be allowed to do the same thing for Christianity if I'm just using those sources as ancient documents? If I don't look at inerrancy, if I don't look at it as divinely inspired, and I just look at it like I would look at anything else from history. I don't.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Do you I guess agree or disagree that since this is all coming from Christian sources, that they would have, I'm not saying they did, but they have more motivation to get behind the story versus somebody outside of the Christian movement that could corroborate this? Like,
Right.
to me, this is a Jesus resurrecting from the dead. I mean, that's a huge claim, Dean. That's
I agree.
astronomical. And I would think the best thing to do would be like, hey, we need to look outside of Christianity to verify this, to ensure that we're getting the most accurate information. I mean, I would think a man resurrecting from the dead, even that long ago, that would spread like wildfire. And people outside of his followers would be recording this. Is it recorded, outside of the Bible or with other groups of humans?
Right. So you made a statement there in the beginning in which you said it seems like they'd be more motivated to get behind this. That seems to be a, I don't know. I guess when it comes to authors of history, and I could be wrong on this. One, everybody has a bias that writes history, right? So one author of Reagan's biography mentions, donates a whole chapter to his divorce before he married Nancy Reagan. Another author says Ronald Reagan was divorced, and that's all you see of it. Well, why is that? Well, it's because there's different motives and different agendas of what they're trying to bring out. So I don't necessarily know that I like the idea of saying, well, this was, wouldn't they be more motivated to get behind the agenda or get behind the Christian movement? Now, I guess my second question is, I think I'm hearing you, and I don't know that you're saying this, but I think I'm hearing you convolute two different things.
Okay.
If you're asking, do we have outside sources with regards to the movement of Christianity, then yeah, we do. We've got Tacitus, Suetonius, Marabar Serapion.
Not that can verify like Christianity, but that can verify that Jesus was resurrected from the dead.
No, not that I know of. I don't know of any extra biblical text that suggests that Jesus rose from the dead. There's one passage by Josephus, but it was interpolated by Christians, meaning Christians went in and they messed with the document. So I don't adhere to that statement made by Josephus. So
okay, so
but you can still take text from within a movement and verify historical events.
Right. I would just think with something as big as this, like, I mean, Dean, if I right now called you and I said, hey, my brother Brent has come back to life. He's been resurrected. And my mom, my brother, everyone in my family corroborates it. Are you going to believe that?
Well, I would take
outside my family.
So run that by me again. Sorry. If your brother did what?
If my brother gets, right now I call you and I say, hey, my brother has been resurrected from the dead. And my family, no one else outside of my family can corroborate this, but my entire family does. Are you going to accept that? Now, I guess to try and explain what I'm trying to say here is, if my entire family corroborated that I had $1,000 in my pocket, that's not really a big claim. You'd probably accept that, right?
It may be a big claim if I value $1,000 a lot, but I see what you're saying.
Okay.
It's not as big a claim as my brother rose from the dead. I see that.
Right. Okay.
So just point by point. Number one, I would be, I guess how I would say it, epistemically neutral as far as my knowledge claim that this happened. I would be neutral. I wouldn't start out with saying, well, that's obviously ridiculous. That wouldn't happen. I would say, okay, Ethan, that's a very interesting claim. I would definitely love to investigate that further and talk with your family about, separately, and talk to them about what they experienced and what they saw. And I talked to you about what you saw and what you experienced.
That's
So, yeah.
what I would expect.
If
So
that
now,
checked out, real quick, if that checked out, I don't see why I don't have good grounds to accept that testimony if it checks out, even if it's just within your family.
but right now, there's a big difference here. You are, talking to me right now. You can actually come talk to my family. You can come verify this for yourself. Like, all right, show me him. Like, it's
Yeah.
really easy. Now,
But
if
isn't that the fault of your analogy?
if you couldn't corroborate this with anyone outside of my family, and if you couldn't see it, if you didn't see him, a recent picture of him or anything,
Right.
would you accept my claim that my brother resurrected?
So if nobody outside corroborated it, and then inside your family, what happened?
My entire family will corroborate it, but
But I never saw a picture of him.
You've never seen a picture of him resurrected. Like you have seen no other data that would lead you to, to believe he's been resurrected. Like, you can't go on Facebook and check his Facebook profile. You can't come to my house and see him. So outside of us just telling you this, is this something you would accept?
Well, I don't necessarily know why I would have to see his face to gain or draw the conclusion that he rose from the dead. I'm sure that in the course of me interviewing your family, they may say something about it. But couldn't you still establish that your brother rose from the dead, even if I didn't see a picture of him? It seems like to me like you could have all the facts laid out and there could be a preponderance of evidence that would show that it happened. It would be foolish for me to say, well, I've never seen a freaking picture of your brother. So therefore, even though the preponderance of evidence points to his resurrection, I deny it because I've never seen his Facebook.
Okay, so then I guess let me ask this: what evidence would you need to believe my brother has just been resurrected from the dead?
I really want to be sarcastic right now.
No, please, dude.
But I'm gonna refrain. So I would say good eyewitness testimony would be good that corroborates as I parsed out your story. I don't necessarily need every story to line up perfectly, but I want to know, and this is what cops do. I want to know what the core data points are, if there are any that line up. So I would take that, the corroborating data from your parents, your parents, your other siblings, if you have any. I'd want to talk to you. And then I would say, okay, well, are there any explicit contradictions in the story? Are these eyewitnesses trustworthy? I guess the same criteria that I would have for the resurrection of Jesus, except I would alter it a little bit because we would be person to person talking.
So I guess that's where maybe you and I are a little bit different. Let's say, one of your family members passed away and everyone in your family corroborated that they've been resurrected. We have no history that a person can be resurrected from the dead. And in fact, I think we could prove it's highly unlikely. So I would see no reason to accept such an astronomical claim simply based on eyewitness accounts.
Right. So because there's a claim that you have never seen, you would not accept eyewitness testimony about that claim, is what you're saying.
About something this, like, there are things I will accept eyewitness testimony on, like, the in proportion to, like, if your entire family told me you just bought a house, I have examples of other people buying homes. It's not
Sure.
hard to believe that, okay, you bought a home, Dean.
Sure.
But to say that you can accept a resurrection simply based off eyewitness testimony seems almost like a failing as a skeptic.
I don't see how it's failing as a skeptic to take good historical data and draw a conclusion to the best explanation. That's what historians do that all the time, regardless of, and it just seems to me, good historical data, good historical evidence, even if it's 2,000 years ago, doesn't become bad historical evidence with the passage of time. Yeah.
I haven't really been reading the comments, but this one actually did just catch my eye. Right now, eyewitnesses can't even agree on whether police identify themselves before knocking down the door to Breonna Taylor's home. And I think what Kenneth's trying to point out here is that eyewitness accounts are notoriously unreliable.
In certain situations, they are unreliable, but in a lot of other situations, eyewitness testimony is what puts people away from 25 to life. That's true. So, I mean, Tim McGrew has, and I wish I could pull it up. I don't know if we have time for me to look for it. Tim McGrew has a document from 2018. It's an eyewitness. It's like it's some type of eyewitness testimony document that says these are the following scenarios and circumstances that produce bad eyewitness testimony. And maybe I'll look for it and we can talk about it in the after party. But it seems to me that while there might be times where eyewitness testimony is bad, eyewitness testimony also can and has put a multitude of people away for life for a crime they committed.
Right, but so here's the thing.
So I don't know that you can just say, carte blanche, eyewitness testimony is, bad because of this incident that's just taken place with Breonna Taylor. That to me doesn't seem to have any weight on whether or not the documents from 2,000 years ago are historically accurate.
So
just because a set of eyewitnesses is bad in one scenario, it doesn't necessarily follow that it's bad in another scenario.
No, but I think it goes to a pattern, particularly because there's sorry, let me just confirm this. It's estimated that 2.3 to 5% of all U.S. prisoners are innocent, and I'm pretty sure it's a safe bet people were put in there based on eyewitness testimony, which at times later gets overturned because we have proof that eyewitness testimony can be unreliable. And that being said,
it can be, but the question is it here? Okay, go ahead.
drawing a line between, for example, someone seeing someone with a gun or seeing someone walk into a store versus somebody getting resurrected. Again, those are two, in my opinion, huge uncomparable things. Now, if we know eyewitness testimony can be unreliable, why would we rely on it for such a large claim?
Right. So once again, you can still rely on eyewitness testimony, even if 2 to 3% of prisoners are innocent because of bad eyewitness testimony. So I mean, I don't know what else to say outside of that. With regards to eyewitness testimony, the question is not, even if it is the case that eyewitness testimony is notoriously bad, you still have to go through the documents of history and determine whether or not these particular documents demonstrate bad eyewitness testimony. That's the burden of proof that you would hold in this scenario. If you say, well, eyewitness testimony is really bad. Okay, well, then you have to walk through the evidence that for the resurrection and say that qualifies as really bad eyewitness testimony. And until you could do that, then you can't just carte blanche say, well, eyewitness testimony is historically bad.
I'm just saying relying on eyewitness testimony for something we have never seen in the history of this world doesn't seem like a reliable reason to believe. Like if I want to accept something that big, I'm going to look for other things, like not just eyewitness testimony.
Well, what else would you look for?
To finish my point, particularly because that's all we have. And to me, eyewitness testimony isn't enough to accept that claim. We're not talking about someone stealing a bag of popcorn here.
Right.
We're talking about something that's never happened before and can be proven to be pretty much impossible. We have no way to resurrect people from the dead, even with today's scientific advancements. And if this was all done by people who believed in him and believed he had these like gifts and powers, wouldn't they be more likely to lie about it?
Why would they be more likely to lie about it? What would be the motivating factor for them to lie?
Okay, let me correct that. Versus lie, get duped. Because if you're already believing that, hey, this person here, like, for example, if I'm already believing that witches can put a curse on me, I'm more likely to see. I mean, that happened to me. I challenged witches to put a curse on me. And what happened later that day? Several things. Now, seriously, Dean, there were several things that not only happened the day I asked for witches to put a hex on me, but in the weeks following. It was some of the worst weeks of my life. Now, I still, if I was to, I think me talking about that is what gave it more. I'm trying to think of how to word this. What gave it more power? Like I was now fixating on all like the possibility of these negatives happening. So I was seeing it in everything, every little thing that happened in my head. I'm like, oh, well, I did ask for witches to curse me. It must be because of that. And that's what I mean by the bias they have. If they have already seen this person perform these alleged miracles, in the back of their mind, they're already thinking, wow, this person is supernatural. They could just see somebody walking past them that looks like Jesus and automatically assume
Right.
that Jesus rose from the dead. Do you think that?
Do you have any historical data that would suggest that they saw somebody walk by them and they say, oh, well, that must be Jesus, but it really wasn't him? Do you have any historical data for that?
Why would I need
do you have any historical data? I guess my question is, what what would make you think that maybe not that they were lying, but what evidence would you have historically that would cause you to say, yeah, they were totally duped?
So I want to be clear. I'm not saying they were for sure duped. I just
Okay.
don't feel like I'm willing to accept eyewitness testimony for the resurrection of Jesus. There just doesn't seem to be anything of anything of merit or believable where I'm like, wow, yeah, that's convincing. Like
Okay. Well, sorry. Go ahead. I was
um,
trying.
a few people that we can't verify were even real human beings outside of the Bible stating that a resurrection happened seems highly unlikely.
Wait. We just went through at the beginning of this conversation about the resurrection. We just went through non-biblical sources that pointed out people that are involved in these stories.
Let me correct myself. Non-Christian sources
We went through non-Christian sources
that
that
verified
verify.
that they
Josephus, Josephus, you said that they didn't even exist. You didn't say that they had these experiences. You said that these people didn't even exist. Well, you've got Clement and Polycarp that are direct disciples of Paul and John. You've got Josephus that talks about Jesus himself and Jesus's brother James. Those are at least three pillars of the church right there.
Okay.
And if the documents, if you believe the documents of the New Testament are anonymous and they're not written by the names that give them the names that are attributed to them, well, then you have anonymous sources. Obviously, I wouldn't classify them as non-biblical, but you have at least anonymous sources who don't put their name attached to it to talk about these guys as well.
And you accept anonymous sources?
No, I mean, I don't say that. I don't say that the texts are actually anonymous, but I think that even in anonymous sourcing, you could still make a historical case for their existence. Even today, you get anonymous tip letters about certain things all the time, and cops follow up on that stuff about where to go and what to do and who to talk to and what happened.
Yeah, but an anonymous tip which can be investigated. I don't see any way we can, especially again because we have no other examples of resurrections. It just seems.
Well, that wasn't the question that you asked. You talked about people who were claiming the resurrection not being historical figures.
Okay, so they are, from my understanding, they are anonymous, correct?
Who?
Sorry, the apostles.
The apostles are not anonymous. They're named in the text of Scripture.
Right, but they're not their real names, correct?
What?
I thought, and maybe I'm mixing this up here, but I thought the Mark, Paul, Luke.
Matthew. Okay, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are the Gospels. Now, those are claimed to be anonymous, right?
Okay.
I would even go as far as to say that the majority of New Testament scholars believe those documents to be anonymous.
Okay.
Right. So, and my point is, while I think that there's a good case for them to be who they are, and maybe I'm just the black sheep apologist out here on the internet. I don't know. I could be, but I don't know. For me, it doesn't really. If we're just looking at ancient documents, and I don't assign inerrancy or inspiration to them, if I'm just looking at them as ancient documents, I don't know that I particularly care if they're anonymous or not. I don't know that I care.
Why?
Because I can still get core historical truths from anonymous documents.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm definitely having trouble with this one here. I'm not seeing I'm not seeing a convincing reason to believe. But that being said, do you want to move into the after party now?
What time are you trying to start the after party?
We can start it right now.
Give me 5 or 6 minutes to reload on coffee, if that's okay.
Sure.
And-
Everyone, if you look at the YouTube right now, I added a StreamYard link to both the description of the video, and I just put a link in the comments. So anyone who wants to come talk to Dean and I, we're going to go live in less than 10 minutes. Feel free to, like I said, click the link in the comments or click the link in the description of the video, and we'll continue this topic in an after party. Dean, what do you got going on, and where can everyone check you out at?
Oh, I've got a YouTube channel called The Daily Apologist. Also, you can go to thedailyapologist.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. Yeah, we even do Pinterest.
You're on Pinterest?
Yeah, TikTok. Most of it is just The Daily Apologist. The Twitter handle is daily_apologist, and that's where you can check me out.
Awesome. Well, Dean, thanks for letting us, thank you for letting me switch this from a debate to more a formal discussion. I really enjoyed this. And
not a problem. And if you ever want to set up another conversation, maybe with you again or with somebody else that's in the comment section about any of this stuff, I'd be more than happy to do it. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I would like to continue this with you again. But everyone, like I said, if you want to go ahead and join the after party, link is both in the description of the video and in the comments section. Thank you for tuning in. Please make sure you like and subscribe. IQ, I hope your family feels better. SJ, same thing. I hope your son stays healthy. I hope you and your husband stay healthy. And everyone be safe out there. And we will see you in less than 10 minutes.
All right.
All right.
Later.
Good night.
Thanks.